Hello fellow chocolate lovers. I'm going to make some dark chocolate praline and walk through the steps as I make it so you can see how simple and easy it can be to make it at home with no fancy equipment or ingredients, just ingredients you can get from a supermarket and equipment that you probably already have at home. While chocolate is amazing and fancy and it can be way out there difficult, it can also be really simple if you let it. So that's what we're going to do. I've got 2 chocolate bars. This is a 70% dark chocolate and they're 180 grams each. I've got 380 gram jar of hazelnut chocolate spread. I've got some slivered almonds. You can leave these out or you can change them for other nuts if you're choosing. I like slivered almonds as a nice entry point into a delicious dark chocolate praline. I also have some icing sugar and vanilla essence. This part isn't exactly entirely necessary, but it does make the slivered almonds extra delicious and crunchy and a beautiful texture to bite through. So you can use rum or something else, but I don't have any at the moment, so vanilla essence it is, does the same job with the pure icing sugar. And for equipment, it's basic stuff. I've got a chopping board because I'm going to chop up the chocolate. That part isn't entirely necessary, you can also just break it up, but we will want to slice through the big praline slab at the end. So a nice knife, just a nice big knife would be good for that. I've got a baking tray for my almonds. I've got, speaking of the almonds, this also isn't necessary, but if you have a rolling pin, that's good for breaking them up into slightly smaller pieces after they're toasted. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can just use an empty off or wine bottle, something like that, or just skip that step entirely, or chop them up. And for melting and tempering the chocolate, I've got a saucepan with a bowl that fits nicely inside. And I love the stainless steel bowls. I'm used to using these type of bowls for melting or tempering chocolate, but you could use anything that just conducts the heat nicely. I've also got a sieve for making sure I don't get big lumps of icing sugar on the almonds. So let's get started. We'll go through this step by step and make something beautiful. Haha, I have a correction coming up already. One thing I forgot to mention at the start is we're going to want somewhere to set our chocolate praline center. So a container will do, preferably something a bit square, just for cutting. But of course, if you want to get creative and make little triangle ones, go for it. And some baking paper. So you can also use wax paper. I have used greaseproof paper in the past, but somehow I find that greaseproof paper now, maybe it's changed, it does sometimes get stuck to the chocolate. So I find that the baking paper is the best one for that. Again, supermarket stuff, hopefully something in the cupboard, and then you don't need anything fancy. Step 1, toasting the almonds. I like to do this first so that they're nice and cool by the time I want to use them. Because when you're melting chocolate, the last thing you want to do is be messing around with the temperature outside of what you're trying to do. So I've got a 300 gram bag, but I only want 50 grams. I have a scale actually, so I could use that. But in case you don't have a scale, you can just eye it off. So let me see, 300 grams, 50 grams is 1/6. So let's see, 1, 2, yeah, about that. Simple. And next, we want to just give it a little drizzle in the liquid, so the alcoholic liquid, whether that be the vanilla bean extract or something else of your heart's desire. This one has beautiful little bits of vanilla bean in it, so I'm just going to give it a shake. And then pour a little over, just so it might have been too much, but that's okay. Beautiful, give it a little coating in that. I am going to wash my hands. just so they're not all sticky on here. And now some icing sugar. You can just do this by sight. It doesn't really matter how much is on there. Just enough to kind of coat, dry out with that vanilla bean extract, or the liquid. Alright, I'll try that. Give it a little mix around. If it seems like it's still too wet, which it does, add a little more. And this is going to get us nice, crunchy, toasty, slightly sweet, but hey, it's going in with chocolate hazelnut spread, so it's going to be sweet anyway. Toasted slivered almonds. All right, so they are ready to go in the oven, and you should be able to smell them when they're nearly done. Obviously not these ones through the screen, but if you're making them at home, you should be able to smell them. But just keep an eye on them. They do seem to take a moment and then suddenly they're done. So keep close to the oven, and as soon as they're kind of looking beautiful brown, then they're ready. If you do burn some, don't worry, just don't use those ones, or eat them and enjoy the process. The almonds are finished toasting in the oven, so they're ready for a taste test. Nice and crunchy. When you first pull them out, they're not going to seem like they're crunchy ready. You just need to cool down a bit. But now I'm going to just gently break them up a little bit, just slightly smaller pieces. I don't really want them crumbled. I just want them so that when you're cutting through the praline, it's not like cutting big pieces of almond. I just want them kind of small. So actually I can see how chopping would be a very viable option here, but this is how I learned to do it, so here's how I'm doing it. Mind you, there's nothing wrong with changing a process to suit you. So that's good. They're slightly more cubey than long sticks, which is what I want. And then you can always just break them like this, but who wants to do that to every single one? Not me. I think that's pretty good. So those are now ready, and they're cooled down, so they'll be ready once we've got our chocolate mixture up to nut stage. After the almonds are toasted, the next step is to start preparing the chocolate that's going to become part of the filling of the praline. So you can start this while the almonds are just cooling after they're done, and I am doing that now, or you can take your sweet time and let them cool down, have them all ready, and then move on to this step. So technically step 2, but you could call it step in between 1 and 2. All right, so I've got two bars of 180 grams. And you can tweak the recipe. I mean, I love tweaking a recipe because I love not using a recipe, and you can tweak it to suit the consistency, the texture that you like. To start with though, this is what I'm doing. So 180 grams, and I'm going to use about 150 of it. Again, you can use a scale or you can just eye it off. So if that's 90, cut off about that much to save for the coating. Put that aside, and the rest, excuse my no face, but I need the strength of pushing down here, and then I'm just going to cut it up. Again, you can break it up, but with this particular bar and its big chunky pieces, I would prefer it a little bit smaller. Just means less waiting time when you're doing the first tempering step of melting it down. Go, some nice smaller pieces, and they're going to go into the bowl to be battered. So here we go. And the rest can be set aside for later with the other chocolate bar. And the best thing about using a nice clean surface is I can reduce my waste. Alright, so now that's prepared, we'll get ready to start phase 1 of tempering. And here I am at chocolate stage. We're doing the first step of tempering. I've got some hot water from the tap. I'm not heating it over the stove. You can look up lots of excellent videos and instructions on tempering, and they will all be more detailed than this. But this is how I do it, nice and simple. And you don't need full flash skills for it. Just a little bit of practice over time will make it easier and easier. But I've got hot water from the tap, and I'm boiling some water as well, kettle or stove. I've just realized from making this video today that I've been doing it with the kettle all this time, and the stove would be a lot less wasted water because I can just pour it back in and keep reheating. So I'll top it up with little bits of boiling water, but I don't want the water boiling. I just want it kind of hot, but I can still put my hand in there and nothing's going to burn. And I don't do it over the stove because you really need to keep a much keener eye on things, and in this case I kind of like it because doing it this way you actually put the bowl into the water, and you can test it because it makes this lovely sound. Ready? And you can kind of see it coming off the bottom of the bowl. But I also want it so that if I press down on it, no water's going to come out, because what's very important about chocolate is that chocolate and water do not mix. They're not friends, even though they're both wonderful things separate to one another. So I'm going to heat this, and you can kind of see it, hopefully, already. Okay, so you can see that's starting to melt there at the sides. I'm just waiting for the water to boil over the stove so I can just add a little bit and make it a tiny bit hotter in the saucepan. And that water in the saucepan is going to cool down over time. So I'll just keep refreshing it every now and again. You can just kind of let that sit there for a while. And you don't really want to be stirring it lots because we don't want to thicken it. So I'm going to try and keep my hands off a little bit and just let that melt down, and then just stir it gently and occasionally to make sure the temperature is kind of evenly happening throughout the chocolate. But doesn't that look good? And I can tell you, it smells really good too. So just a quick note on the steps of tempering. Without getting into crystallization of it, basically, we're just gonna heat it so that it's nice and melted, silky, runny, kind of warm, bordering on hot to the touch. And I keep doing this because I'm going to show you how I make a little mustache to test the temperature. And then we're going to cool it right down until it's like cool to the touch and it's almost like getting a tiny bit hard, and you'll be able to see it thickening up. But we don't want to let it set there because it actually won't set. It won't be nice and tempered. We'll get the grey streaks, won't be as nice texturally to eat. If we're just going to melt it and set it, you may as well be using compound cooking chocolate. So if you're going to go all out and get the nice chocolate, then at least need to make the effort to temper it. So we're going to do that. That's step 2 of it, cooling it down. And in this particular step, because it's the filling, we can add the hazelnut chocolate spread and the nuts at that cooling stage. If we were just doing the coating, which I will do later, then it's just step 1, 2, 3, no extras. And then that 3rd step after cooling is just warming it back up slightly. We'll do a little mustache temperature test, my favorite way to test. And that will kind of get to just room temperature-ish, like it'll feel ever so slightly warm, like almost not warm, just anyway. You'll also notice a textural difference at that point too, like it looks just beautiful and silky and ready to go without being that hot melted stage. And any of the experts will tell you to like test it, and I do recommend that. I definitely skip that stage a lot and sometimes regret it and sometimes don't, but yeah, that's a good little trick if you're just not sure about the temperature, to just kind of do a little test and keep it at that same temperature for a moment while you see if it sets. All right, but at this stage, we're still on step 1 of the tempering process, just melting down this chocolate, ready to make the filling. All right, I've just topped up the water underneath, made it a bit warm again. I love having a tea towel ready just so I don't get water all over this potentially water-free chocolate zone in here. And there, it's making that beautiful thing again. Just a note about tempering with such small amounts: be kind to yourself. I'm going to be kind to myself because when you're working with such a tiny amount, the temperature changes a lot quicker than if you were like making an industrial amount of chocolate, and it's a lot less forgiving. So, I mean, keep your wits about you for that reason, but also, you know, if it doesn't come out perfectly, try again, and you may just become the expert at tiny batch chocolate tempering. The chocolate is very close to finishing that first step of tempering. You can see a few tiny lumps. Probably can't see that there, but there's still a few tiny lumps of almost melted chocolate. And one method when you're tempering and doing the cooling step, especially to speed it up, is to leave those lumps in there and then let them slowly melt, or even not fully melt, and that helps cool down the rest of the chocolate. But I'm going to melt them fully today because I'm mixing in other things and I don't want chocolate lumps left. And also that method is, I find, particularly useful if I'm, say, coating some truffles, because you know, you're digging into the chocolate and you can easily avoid the lumps and not end up with a big lump in what you're doing. Okay, so now I'm going to test it. Put a little bit, make sure it's like, you don't want to mix it, over mix it, but make sure it's kind of like a good average of the temperature. And then I'm just going to put a little bit on my mustache, and please think of me as Charlie Chaplin only. And give that a little taste. I might just go grab my clean cloth. Alright, so try that again. So I was not paying attention. So a little bit. Yeah, and that's nice. That's warm, verging on hot. My lumps have finished, so I'm going to take that off the heat, dry it off, and then just leave it to cool down on a nice cool spot in the kitchen. Now, because I'm adding extra things and this is going to be a filling, I don't actually need to leave it to cool all the way to the end. So I'm going to add the nuts in now and then see what the temperature's like, and then add my hazelnut spread. Nuts are going in and they can help it cool down because they're nice and cool. So I guess I don't want to wait till it's way too cool, because then it might set, or not quite set, but go hard on me. Alright, there we go. Yeah, still pretty warm. This will cool it down a little bit further because this is, again, not heated. Okay, so I'm going to mix this in. Hopefully I didn't pick too small a bowl. I feel like I need a chocolate themed song going on right now. And if you're making praline and that filling comes out too firm, then reduce the amount of chocolate and add more hazelnut spread. To do this, I mean, supermarket ingredients have a lot of may contains. So, I mean, if you're doing this with someone who has dietary requirements, then the supermarket ingredients are not the way to go. You've got more options with an actual wholesale supplier, but also huge amounts of things. You can't really usually get it in small amounts like this for a tiny batch. But it does mean you also have more control over consistency, because you can get just like straight up hazelnut paste. And then you can also get like a gianduja paste, which is just hazelnut and sugar. And that allows you to play around with the ratios and get just the perfect consistency that you like, and even the perfect sweetness. You wouldn't have to have it as sweet if you're going for that full chocolate, non-sweet tooth praline. Admittedly though, praline is always quite sweet because of just the sugar in there. Alright, so I'm just trying to gently mix this through so that I don't have like a whole chunk of hazelnut chocolate paste separate to the chocolate. I want it as one smooth mixture, but the trick is to not over mix it as well. And it should be cooling down in the process merely, not just from sitting here out of the heat, but also from adding the cool ingredients. But I'll let it cool a bit further because I can feel even on my finger there that it's still a bit warm. All right, try and mix it all in here. Give it a little test. Ooh, it's cooled down quite a bit. I'll just give it a moment more. And you can feel that it's nice and sensitive there, and you can feel the temperature quite well, and like it actually does feel cool. And I'll just wait for it to get a tiny bit cooler, mostly so I can clean myself up, but I think it's not at risk of going firm yet, so we're all good. While I wait for the praline mixture to cool a little further, I'm going to prepare my container. And if you're organized, I'd ideally do this before you even start this, just so you can keep your wits about you with the chocolate and the tempering process. But basically, I've pulled off a little bit and I'm just lining the inside of the container like this. And the reason for doing it this way is because then I can just use a nice simple container And when it's done, when it's nice and set, I can just lift it out and put it on a flat surface, ready to do the coating and the cutting. So there we go. Try and get something, I mean, you might need to play around a little bit, but so that the size makes the thickness of the center about what you want. That's flexible, just something that you just kind of want the right height, that you bite through the crispy top and bottom and have that nice smooth center. I'm going for maybe 2 centimeters-ish. Yeah, not super on top of the spatial awareness of knowing what 2 centimeters is, but you know, just a little way up here. So we'll see. Once I pour it in, I should know roughly how close I am to the amount. I have a feeling this container might even be a bit small. We'll find out, and if that's the case, I can just put some of it in here and some of it in another, or start again with a bigger one, although I think the bigger one is much bigger. So we'll see how we go. All right, this is starting to get a little firm. It won't fully set because it's not supposed to. It's meant to stay kind of soft. So that's nice and cool enough. Feels kind of cool on here. So I'm going to put it back in this warm water for just a moment, depending on how warm it is in there. At this process, this step in the process, it just slightly heating it to that perfect tempered moment. I like to not have it too hot underneath, especially because it's such a small amount and it heats up really fast. So I don't know, I'll see if I can show you, but it's already getting like shiny in there, which is a good sign that it's very close to done. I just want to make sure it's kind of evenly warmed. And the reason why we do it in this step of the process is just because it turns out better. If you don't temper this part, it'll be fine and forgiving, but it won't have a smoother texture, and it will be also a little bit harder to cut through it, a bit more crumbly potentially. All right, so I'm gonna, so close. Excuse me. All right, let's try that again. Alright, got that shine. Let's see. Yeah, that's just right. It's just a bit more than cool, bit more than room temp. So I'll dry off the bottom, make sure I don't get any water in here. And now pour it into the bowl, into the container. And scrape it all out. And actually this step is a good like practice tempering. It's kind of harder to do with the other things in it because it's got a different consistency, but it's also more forgiving than just straight up chocolate. So, as in if it doesn't come out quite right, it'll still be amazing. Alright, so I'm just going to spread that to the corners and try and get as much on my fingers as possible so that I get to have a nice eat at the end. Just kidding, but am I? Alright, all the way to the corners. And I want to get it kind of flat as I can because it's quite a thick mixture. It won't really come out perfectly flat. I'll do my best. Definitely a little bit of that noise. Hold this in place. so it doesn't move around too much. Just nice and flat. Now, I will have to cut off and waste/eat the edges just to make it beautiful at the end. And that is one of my favorite parts. But here we go, that's there, fairly flat, ready to set. And ideally you would let it set for like 1 to 2 days. In a pinch though, you can put it in the fridge for say, just keep an eye on it, like up to 20 minutes, but maybe way less. It's not usually how we'll do it, so I'm not great at advising on that. But maybe I'll give it a go today and time it and let you know. For anyone else like me trying to do the in a pinch, racing ahead version when you don't have a day or two to let it set, 20 minutes seems to be good in the fridge. And I put it on top of another container with a plastic lid so it's not directly on the glass shelf of the fridge, just so that the bottom of it doesn't get a lot cooler a lot quicker than the rest of it. So it's just a bit more of an even cooling, even though we've super speeded it. And you can see here, I'll pull it off, it's a little uneven in height, but that's okay. I'm not selling it. If you were obviously doing it commercially, you'd want to have it a little bit more even, but for at home, this is perfect. You're gonna love it, I'm gonna love it, friends are gonna love it, it's perfect. And I'll cut off these nice edges just to make it easier to add the next step of the chocolate. And then at the end, I get more little treats as I cut off the ends to make neater squares. So there we go, that's ready. And then we're up to the final step, which is tempering the coating chocolate to cover the top and then the bottom, and then finally cutting them up. And I include that as one step because you want to do the cutting before it's fully set. Otherwise it's a lot harder to cut through, especially if you've tempered it beautifully and then it snaps nicely, which is amazing for biting into it. Not so amazing for trying to cut a straight line through the chocolate without it cracking everywhere. All right, the final chocolate countdown and the final step. I've got the rest of the chocolate chopped up. So that's the 180 gram bar that was unopened, plus the extra approximate 30 grams. I'm gonna put that in the bowl, which has been cleaned and dried, ready to do another round of tempering, but this time just chocolate, not adding any ingredients. So while I'm casting out the perfectionist in me, we're still gonna put a little bit of our heart and soul into, I'm gonna put a little bit of my heart and soul into it because I do want the top and bottom layer to come out nice and crispy and shiny. So it's time to get that bain-marie going again with some hot water, not boiling, just hot, and start step one of the tempering 3. So it goes up to warm, down to cool, and then just to the middle, and we'll start that now. All right, coating the top and bottom of the praline now. I've got that first step of tempering just about done. There are no lumps. A few seconds ago there were lumps, when one tiny lump left. Almost gone. I don't know if you can see that. It's quite runny, and if I give it a little temperature test, it's quite warm, and I am Charlie Chaplin again. So I am gonna just add a drop more of heat to this. And give it a couple more seconds to get just that bordering on hot but not quite hot temperature. It's quite runny now. Yeah, and perfect. So now I'm going to let that sit, chill out for a bit. There are different ways to cool or do these steps in tempering chocolate. Lots of different chocolatiers use different methods, like the marble slab, or even at home, maybe putting it in the fridge. I find when doing it this way with a tiny bit of chocolate like this, where everything happens relatively fast, you know, you're not dealing with kilos at a time. Just sit it on the bench, relax for a bit, and then just periodically check on it until it's cooled and ready. It's always good when working with chocolate to not be in a hurry. Just pick a time when you can take your time and you'll get the best result. Well, welcome back. Here it is, cooled down, almost completely cooled down. Now, I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can. It's a little bit sticking to the bottom because it's setting on there, and a tiny bit on the sides, and it's thickening up a little bit, slightly less shiny. And I give it a test, and it's nice and cool. Just gonna retest that. Yeah, that's nice and cool. So it's ready. It's ready to start warming up again. Now this pot here has some warm water. It's not very warm, but it should be enough for just this last bit, because I don't want to overheat it and then go too far up, then I have to restart. Mind you, not the end of the world if that happens. Just takes a bit more time. So now it's starting to unthicken, kind of loosen up, get shiny again. So I just want to make sure I don't overheat one section of it, leave the rest cold. Just kind of evenly get it through without over stirring. There are even teeny tiny little lumps forming as it's cooled. Borderline too cold, but I think it'll be okay. I'll just test that. It's reheating quite slowly because the water underneath is not super warm. Just a little bit. Can have it a bit warmer, but you just need to be, with such a small amount, just being careful not to overheat it. And in case you're wondering about that testing, you can just take a little bit, put it, I do it somewhere where you can see, like that, and then it should tell you in a few moments whether it's setting. I'm just going to take this off the warmth. Yeah, make sure I don't go too far the other way, because I don't really want it to feel warm on my little temperature gauge. I just want it slightly warmer than room temperature. All right, I can already see that sort of setting. I don't know if you can, if you stick a finger into it, it should be getting firmer. And you want it to be shiny as well. And eventually, like the tail end of it where it's thinner should set faster as well than the thick part, but it should be overall setting. Now, here we go, ready to coat. I'm just going to cover that over because space. And I want to use only half of this for the top of this layer, so I can turn it over and use the other half on the other side. So I'm going to pour it over. All right, get out my knife. Just any old knife will do. And spread it here. If you've got a fancy tool, go for it. But otherwise, Knife is fine. If you wanted to get really fancy, you could also at the same time temper a bit of milk chocolate or something, and then put some lines in it, and then with your knife roll the other way through to get a cool pattern. I'm just going to do this. It's already setting actually, so it's not going to flatten. But what I will do is I'll be right back with something cool. Alright, I'm going to use this old plastic film thing that I still have to actually make a smooth surface. I've left it a bit long, it's already setting, but if you were a bit faster you could pop it down. You can also use grease proof, you just won't get a shinier result. And I can peel off this layer, and oh, that's already setting, so I'm going to just apply a bit more warmth back onto that chocolate to do the other side. So if I'm a little faster, I can do it in one go, but if not, no problem. Back onto the warmth for just a moment longer. Maybe add a tiny bit more warmth. When I say tiny, I mean tiny. Yeah, that's getting shiny again. Wish you could see that better. Can you? Make sure it doesn't get too warm. That's good. Oh, just want to dry the bottom so I don't drip any water on the chocolate there. You can see actually, I don't know if you can see that, the top part of this was beautiful and shiny. Possibly because in the fridge this part didn't temper as nice on the bottom, so you can kind of see the grey swirls in that, but that's alright, it's not bad enough that we can't just cover it over. So yeah, it's ready to go. Even better if you have it not lumpy, but I don't mind. I can always pick off the big lumps. Alright, so I'm going to spread it around quickly before it sets. A couple of big lumps there, so wipe them off. The rest will be just fine. Alright, and a little... Alright, that won't flatten out that much because it's already setting, but here is where we get the knife, and we can cut just as it's setting. It's probably wait a few more moments because it's still quite, oh no, it's looking pretty good on this side. So I'm going to cut off the edges. They're the offcuts for me to enjoy at any time I please. I don't know if you can see that. Oh no. Oh, it's fine, it's set. Can't even tell. And this way, I get to eat offcuts without counting how many I've had. And I also get a nice rectangle to cut some squares. So I'll start cutting, maybe about that thick. Just going through. And because it's not quite set, I'm able to cut through, but if it was, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but if it was completely set, it would be very difficult to do it without it kind of cracking all over the place. Oh, I'm going a bit angular by accident here, but it's okay. And now the other way. I'll just do a few at a time. I'm going to get some nice little squares. Square-ish shapes. Beautiful. And next ones. I might set these on this side so I don't chop through the others. It's a nice little more offcuts for me. And last ones. Let's move these forward. Last ones. Oops, I've put some fingerprints in there, so that can be mine. The cool thing is, even though I quite like the texture, if you got it without sort of sitting on the way, then you have a nice, beautiful, shiny, smooth finish. But I quite like the texture, and the fact that it's shiny means good tempering. So woohoo! There we are, there are pralines. I'm just gonna eat this one, not an offcut, beautiful square with my fingerprint in there. That's good. If we wait a little bit till it sets properly, that crisp little bite through on the top and the bottom should be amazing. But anyone you serve this to, well, I know, because anyone I serve it to is gonna be like, ooh, this is amazing. Even if it's not my best effort. Because really, even though you've just seen how it's not that hard to do it, doesn't happen a lot. So they're very special. It is a little, you do get to put a little bit of effort in there, so you know there's lots of love that goes in, and it's just a really nice and special treat. Enjoy. It's time for the chocolate wrap up. Literally, I've got these delicious dark chocolate pralines ready to gift to someone. But how am I going to gift them if I'm not serving them at home? Well, this is where my food safe wrapping comes in handy that I've already got here at home in the kitchen. So I've got my baking paper. Use whatever you've got that's like this. I'm tearing a bit off, and I'm going to pop some chocolates in here. And a tip for this, when you're wrapping up chocolate, always make sure it's well set. Always better to do it a day or two later, but at least a few hours with your clean hands, and that way you're not getting little finger marks on there. When it's fully set, less likely to happen. Also, clean hands, always good, hopefully implied. All right, and I'm going to fold this over. Fold again. And tuck it around. Put some tape on the bottom, or in my case I've got some string, so I'm just going to tie it up with string. Ooh. When I remember how to tie a bow. Look at that. How cute is that? I hope you enjoyed getting the skinny on how I make dark chocolate pralines with simple ingredients that are easy to get a hold of and equipment that's usually at home. A few takeaways and lessons learned. 1, tempering is key. It's not difficult though, and practice will build confidence. If you live in a climate like mine with very hot days sometimes, then it's helpful to let go of perfectionism. If it's a challenging day for tempering, then why not pick another day? And if you can't, be kind to yourself and remember that all the chocolate is misbehaving today, not just yours. Secondly, Liz Lemoning, or having it all. Despite having recently read a book called Brain Rules by John Medina and learning for the first time that multitasking is a myth, which explains a lot of burnt food in my time, I still frequently, and even making this video, fall into the trap of a watch pot never boils, or if you enjoy, like me, the comedic stylings of Guy Montgomery's Guy Mont Spelling Bee, a watch pot never effervesces. But no problem. Chocolate is forgiving and it lets us have do-overs. So if, like me, you let it cool for too long, which I actually did twice, let it cool completely, few too many songs on the piano. Here I have a very close distraction of something to do while I'm waiting. which actually just splits focus, and come back and find, oh, chocolate has completely cooled and I need to start the tempering process again. So that's no problem. Because it lets us have do-overs, you can do that. You leave it too long or you heat it too much on that last step, no problem. Start again with the heating and the cooling and then the tempering. And the next time it should work out, especially if you're focused. The second time for me, again, I split my focus, but I came back a little bit earlier, which meant I could still temper the chocolate. It was just going to be a lumpier texture at the end, which I'm quite okay with.